Moonlight filtered through the dense canopy of ancient pines, casting ethereal shadows across Chenoa's face as she raced through the forest. Her bare feet barely touched the ground, each step precise despite the darkness. The tribal tattoos on. Her arms seemed to pulse with an inner light, a warning she couldn't ignore. The sacred markings, intricate patterns of wolves and crescents that had been passed down through generations of her bloodline, were more than mere decoration. They were a connection to her ancestors, and tonight they burned with unprecedented urgency. Behind her, a howl shattered the night's silence, deep, commanding, and tinged with something that made her blood run cold. Wikasa was getting closer. The sound echoed through the valley, causing small animals to scatter in terror. Even the forest itself seemed to recoil from the corruption in that cry. "You cannot run from destiny, Chenoa." His voice carried on. The wind, a mixture of fury and desperation that made her heart clench. This wasn't the man she'd known since childhood, the noble alpha who had led their pack with wisdom and compassion. Something had changed during the last moon ceremony, twisting him into something else. The memory of that night flashed through her mind. The ancient ritual circle, the elders chanting in their sacred tongue, and then the moment everything went wrong. The moment Wikasa's eyes had turned from their warm brown to that sickly amber glow. Chenoa ducked behind an ancient oak, pressing her back against its rough bark. Her chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath, mind racing through the events of the past 24 hours. The sacred texts she'd discovered hidden in Tasunka's library, the horrifying truth about her family's connection to the curse, and the revelation that would change everything. The leather-bound tome had been concealed behind a false panel, its pages yellowed with age and written in a mixture of their native language and symbols she'd never seen before. "I know what you found in those books," Wikasa called out, closer now. "The prophecy was never meant for your eyes." His voice carried a note of genuine fear beneath the anger, something that made Chenoa's instincts scream in warning. Whatever secret lay hidden in those ancient pages, it was powerful enough to terrify even an alpha. Leaves crunched under his feet as he stalked through the shadows. Chenoa could feel his presence, the raw power of an alpha, now tainted by ancient magic that should have remained buried. Her fingers clutched the leather pouch hanging from her neck, containing the only evidence that could expose generations of carefully guarded lies. Inside, the fragments of parchment seemed to pulse with their own energy, as if responding to the proximity of the curse they described. The night air grew thick with tension, carrying the scent of pine needles and something else, an acrid undertone that reminded Chenoa of burning sage and bitter herbs. The protection spells woven into her tattoos tingled against her skin, reacting to the dark magic that now surrounded Wikasa like a toxic cloud. A twig snapped to her left, and she whirled just in time to see him emerge from the darkness. His eyes glowed with an unnatural amber light, his handsome features twisted into something feral. The tribal markings on his chest, once a symbol of his noble lineage, now writhed like living shadows across his skin. Gone was the gentle smile that had once made her heart skip a beat, replaced by a predatory snarl that revealed elongated canines. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he growled, taking a step closer. "The curse isn't what you think. It's protection, insurance that our bloodlines remain pure, our power absolute." His words carried the weight of ancient tradition. But there was something else there too. A desperate need to justify actions that went against everything their people had once stood for. Chenoa straightened, drawing on the strength of her ancestors. She could feel them now, their presence like whispers in the wind, urging her to stand firm. "Protection? Is that what you call what happened to my mother? To all the others who dared to question the council's authority?" The words tasted like ash in her mouth, memories of her mother's mysterious disappearance 7 years ago rising unbidden. A flash of something, pain, regret, or perhaps just the curse tightening its hold, crossed Wikasa's face. For a moment, she caught a glimpse of the man she'd grown up with, the one who had taught her to track through these very woods, who had held her hand at her mother's memorial ceremony. "Your mother made her choice, just as you're making yours now. Don't force my hand, Chenoa. Please." The last word came out as a whisper, a glimpse of the man she'd once trusted with her life, her heart. But then his features hardened again, and she knew she had only seconds to act. The curse was winning, consuming whatever remained of the real Wicasa beneath its dark influence. "The curse ends with me," she declared, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. The tattoos on her arms flared brightly, responding to the power in her words. Before he could react, she pulled a small vial from her pouch and smashed it at her feet. Purple smoke erupted around her, the protection spell Tasunka had given her for emergencies exactly like this. She heard Wikasa's roar of frustration as she vanished into the night, the sound following her through the trees like a physical force. She had until the next full moon to uncover the truth. About the curse, about her family's role in its creation, and about the dark secret that had turned the man she loved into a monster. But first, she needed to find Tasunka. The old medicine man had gone missing 3 days ago, leaving behind only a cryptic message written in their ancient language. When the moon bleeds red, truth shall be revealed. The Alpha's obsession becomes his undoing, and only the seventh daughter of the seventh daughter can break the chains that bind us all. Seek the ancient grove where the first pack made their covenant with the spirits. There, beneath the roots of the great tree, lies the key to our salvation and our damnation. As Chenoa ran through the darkness, the weight of destiny heavy on her shoulders, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something crucial. The curse that had taken Wicasa, the disappearance of her mother, Tasunka's warning. They were all connected by threads she had yet to unravel. And somewhere in the shadows of her own family's past lay answers that would either save them all or destroy everything they had built over generations. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold. Chenoa emerged from the dense forest, her clothes torn and muddy from her night of desperate flight. She stood at the edge of a cliff, gazing down at the small town of Wolf's Hollow, nestled in the valley below. From this vantage point, it looked like any other sleepy mountain community. Quaint houses with wisps of smoke curling from chimneys, the main street just beginning to stir with early morning activity. But Chenoa knew better. Beneath the veneer of normalcy lay a world steeped in ancient magic and dangerous secrets. A world where shapeshifters walked among humans, where curses passed down through bloodlines could twist even the noblest of souls. Her hand instinctively went to the leather pouch around her neck, ensuring the precious fragments of parchment were still there. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders as she considered her next move. She couldn't go home, not with Wicasa and his followers surely searching for her. But she needed allies, someone who could help her decipher the cryptic warnings in Tasunka's message. With a deep breath, Chenoa began the treacherous descent down the mountain path. Her muscles ached from the night's exertion, but she pushed through the pain, knowing that every second counted. As she neared the outskirts of town, a familiar scent caught her attention, the sharp tang of herbs and medicinal plants. "I was wondering when you'd show up," a gravelly voice called out. Chenoa whirled to see an elderly woman emerge from a small cabin half hidden by overgrown vines. Maska, the pack's healer and Tasunka's longtime friend, regarded her with piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Maska," Chenoa breathed, relief washing over her. "I need your help. Wicasa, he's—" The old woman held up, a gnarled hand silencing her. "I know, child. The winds have been whispering of darkness for days now. Come inside, quickly. It's not safe to speak of such things in the open." Chenoa followed Maska into the cabin, her senses immediately assaulted by the pungent aroma of drying herbs and bubbling concoctions. The walls were lined with shelves full of jars, each labeled in the healer's spidery handwriting. In the center of the room stood a large table covered in open books and scattered notes. "You've been researching the curse," Chenoa realized, recognizing some of the symbols from the parchments she carried. Maska nodded grimly. "Tasunka and I have long suspected that the truth about our people's past was far darker than the elders would have us believe. When he disappeared, I knew the time had come for secrets to be dragged into the light." She fixed Chenoa with a penetrating stare. "But you already know that, don't you? You've seen the hidden texts." Chenoa pulled out the fragments, carefully, laying them on the table. "I found these in Tasunka's library, along with a message about the seventh daughter of the seventh daughter. Maska, what does it all mean? And what's happened to Wikasa? The old woman's face creased with sorrow as she examined the parchments. It's as we feared, she murmured. The curse is awakening, growing stronger with each passing generation. And Wikasa, he's merely the latest victim of our ancestors' hubris. Maska moved to a locked cabinet, retrieving an ornate wooden box. From it, she produced a leather-bound journal that looked even older than the fragments Chenoa had found. This belonged to your great-great-grandmother Chenoa. She was the one who first discovered the terrible truth about our tribe's origins. As Maska began to read from the journal, Chenoa felt a chill run down her spine. The words painted a picture of a desperate time centuries ago, when their people faced extinction at the hands of rival tribes and encroaching settlers. The Pax Alpha at the time, driven to protect his people at any cost, had made a bargain with dark spirits. In exchange for power, the ability to shift forms and enhanced strength, our ancestors bound themselves and all their descendants to these spirits, Maska explained. But such gifts always come with a price. The curse was meant to ensure the purity of our bloodlines, to keep the power concentrated. Any alpha who tries to break the covenant or dilute the bloodline becomes corrupted, consumed by an obsession to maintain control at any cost. Chenoa's mind reeled as the pieces began to fall into place. That's what's happening to Wikasa, but why now? And what does this have to do with my mother's disappearance? Maska's expression grew grave. Your mother discovered the truth, just as you have. She sought to break the curse, to free our people from this dark legacy. But the spirits, they have ways of protecting their investment. Those who pose a true threat to the covenant tend to vanish. Anger and grief warred within Chenoa's chest. So the elders, they've known all along. They've been complicit in this. Some know the full truth, others only pieces, Maska replied. But all have been bound by fear and tradition to maintain the status quo. Your mother's disappearance was a warning to those who would challenge the old ways. Chenoa's fists clenched at her sides. And now Wikasa is their puppet, enforcing their will whether he wants to or not. Maska nodded solemnly. The curse twists the alpha's natural protective instincts into something dark and possessive. He'll stop at nothing to bring you back, into the fold, to prevent you from breaking the covenant that gives our people their power. But there has to be a way to stop this, Chenoa insisted. Tasunka's message, it spoke of a key beneath the great tree. And what about this seventh daughter business? The old healer's eyes gleamed with a mix of hope and trepidation. Ah, child. That's where you come in. Your mother was the seventh daughter in her line. And you are the seventh of her line. The prophecy speaks of one with the power to break the chains, to sever our connection to the dark spirits without sacrificing the gifts we've come to rely on. Chenoa felt the weight of destiny settle even more heavily upon her shoulders. But how? I don't have any special powers. I can't even fully shift yet. Maska placed a comforting hand on her arm. The power lies dormant within you, waiting to be awakened. But to do so, you'll need to undertake a dangerous journey. The great tree mentioned in Tasunka's message is real. It's the site where the original covenant was made. Beneath its roots lies an artifact of immense power, one that could potentially break the curse. Then that's where I need to go, Chenoa said with determination. Where can I find this tree? Maska's expression grew troubled. It lies deep in the heart of the Black Forest, a place so steeped in dark magic that few dare to enter. The journey itself is perilous, and you'll face trials designed to test your worthiness. And even if you reach the tree, retrieving the artifact won't be easy. The spirits will fight to protect it. Chenoa squared her shoulders, feeling a surge of resolve. I have to try. For Wikasa, for my mother, for all of us trapped by this curse, what do I need to do? The old healer moved swiftly, gathering supplies into a worn leather backpack. You'll need provisions, protective charms, and knowledge to guide you. I can provide the first two, but for the third, she hesitated, then pressed a small, intricately carved stone into Chenoa's palm. This will lead you to Tasunka. Finding him is crucial. He possesses information vital to your quest. As Chenoa prepared to leave, Masca grabbed her arm, fixing her with an intense gaze. Remember, child, the curse is clever. It will try to deceive you, to prey on your deepest fears and desires. Trust your instincts, and never forget why you're fighting. Chenoa nodded, her throat tight with emotion. She knew that stepping out, that door meant leaving behind the only life she'd ever known, embarking on a journey that would either save her people or doom them all. As she reached the threshold, Masca called out one last warning. Be wary, Chenoa. The dark spirits have eyes everywhere. Trust no one completely, not even those you've known all your life. The curse has a way of turning allies into enemies when you least expect it. With those ominous words ringing in her ears, Chenoa stepped out into the brightening day. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and the weight of centuries-old secrets. But as she felt the warm sun on her face and the wind in her hair, she also felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them, head on. For Wikasa, for her mother, for her people, she would break the chains that bound them all. The sun had climbed high in the sky by the time Chenoa reached the outskirts of Wolf's Hollow. She kept to the shadows, acutely aware that Wikasa's influence likely extended throughout the town. Every face she saw, from the baker setting out fresh loaves to the children playing in the schoolyard, could potentially be an unwitting spy for the corrupted Alpha. Chenoa's destination lay on the far side of town, the old church that had stood abandoned for decades. It was a place most of the pack avoided, believing it tainted by the outsider's god. But Chenoa knew better. The church was a sanctuary, carefully maintained in secret by a network of those who sought to preserve knowledge that the elders would rather see forgotten. As she darted between buildings, using every ounce of stealth her training had instilled, Chenoa couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The carved stone Masca had given her seemed to pulse with a faint warmth against her skin, as if resonating with some unseen energy. Just as she was about to make a final dash across an open street, a hand clamped over her mouth, dragging her into a narrow alley. Chenoa's combat instincts kicked in instantly. She drove an elbow back, connecting with her attacker's solar plexus, then spun to face them, fists raised. "Wait!" a familiar voice wheezed. "Chenoa, it's me!" Her eyes widened as she recognized Kiona, her childhood best friend and fellow member of the pack's younger generation. Kiona doubled over, catching her breath after Chenoa's blow. "Kiona? What are you doing here? How did you find me?" Chenoa demanded, suspicion warring with relief at seeing a friendly face. Kiona straightened, her dark eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination. "I've been looking everywhere for you since last night. The whole pack is in an uproar. Wikasa's calling for your immediate return, claiming you've stolen sacred artifacts and are a danger to us all." Chenoa's heart sank. So it had already begun, the Alpha turning her own people against her. "You can't believe that, Kiona. You know me." "Of course I don't," Kiona replied fiercely. "But others might. Something's very wrong, Chenoa. Wikasa's, not himself and the elders. They're acting strange, like they're afraid of their own shadows." Chenoa hesitated, torn between the need for secrecy and the desire to confide in her oldest friend. But Masca's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one completely. "I can't explain everything right now," Chenoa said carefully. "But I'm trying, to help our people, to fix something that's been broken for a very long time. I need to get to the old church without being seen. Can you help me?" Kiona's eyes widened in recognition. "The sanctuary. So it's true then. There really is a secret group working against the elders?" Chenoa neither confirmed nor denied, simply meeting her friend's gaze steadily. After a moment, Kiona nodded. "I'll create a distraction. Give me 5 minutes, then make your move." Before Chenoa could respond, Kiona was gone, slipping out of the alley and into the busy street. True to her word, a commotion erupted a few minutes later. Shouts and the sound of breaking glass drew the attention of everyone nearby. Seizing her chance, Chenoa sprinted across the open ground, her heart pounding as she reached the weathered doors of the old church. She whispered a word in the ancient language, one taught to her in secret by her mother years ago. The lock clicked open, and she slipped inside. The interior was dim, dust motes dancing in the few shafts of sunlight that penetrated the grime-covered windows. But as Chenoa's eyes adjusted, she saw that the abandoned appearance was just a facade. Hidden behind rotting pews and crumbling statues were bookshelves lined with ancient tomes, tables covered in maps and scrolls, and walls adorned with intricate diagrams of ley lines and celestial patterns. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't make it," a gravelly voice called out. From the shadows emerged a figure Chenoa had feared she might never see again. Tasunka, the pack's missing medicine man and her mother's most trusted ally. "Tasunka!" Chenoa rushed forward, relief flooding through her. "You're alive, but where have you been? Why did you disappear?" The old man's weathered face creased in a grim smile. "All in good time, young one. First, show me what you've brought." Chenoa hesitated only a moment before producing the leather pouch containing the parchment fragments and the carved stone from Mosca. Tasunka examined them carefully, his expression growing more troubled with each passing second. "So it's as we feared," he murmured. "The curse is gathering strength faster than we anticipated. Chenoa, do you understand what these fragments represent?" She shook her head, and Tasunka continued, "They are pieces of the original covenant, the contract our ancestors made with the dark spirits. For generations we believed the full text was lost to time, but your mother, she discovered that the elders had hidden it, broken it into pieces and scattered them to prevent anyone from learning the full truth." Chenoa's mind raced. "And if we could reassemble it, then we might find a way to break the curse without sacrificing the gifts it bestowed upon our people," Tasunka confirmed. "But it won't be easy. The remaining fragments are heavily guarded, and time is not on our side." He led her to a large table covered in star charts and ancient calendars. "The blood moon approaches, a rare celestial event that occurs only once every 100 years. It's during this time that the connection between our world and the spirit realm is at its strongest. If we don't break the curse before the moon reaches its zenith." "Then what?" Chenoa pressed, dread pooling in her stomach. Tasunka's eyes were heavy with the weight of terrible knowledge. "Then the dark spirits will be able to fully manifest in our world. They'll no longer need human vessels to exert their influence, and Wicasa, corrupted as he is, will become their permanent anchor to this realm." The gravity of the situation settled over Chenoa like a physical weight. "How long do we have?" 3 days, Tasunka replied grimly. 3 days to gather the remaining fragments, decipher their meaning, and perform a ritual powerful enough to sever ties with beings that have been intertwined with our people for centuries. Chenoa's mind whirled with the enormity of the task before her. "But how? I'm just one person, and Wicasa has the entire pack hunting for me." Tasunka's expression softened. "Not the entire pack, young one. There are more of us working in secret than you know. Your mother laid the groundwork for this moment long ago, building a network of allies who saw the truth behind the elders' lies." As if on cue, a hidden door at the back of the church swung open. Chenoa gasped as familiar faces emerged from the concealed room, pack members she'd known all her life, including some she never would have suspected of rebellion. Among them was Kiona, her earlier distraction apparently a ruse to throw off any watchers. "Sorry for the deception," she said with a sheepish grin. "Had to make sure you weren't followed." Tasunka placed a hand on Chenoa's shoulder. "You are not alone in this fight, child. But make no mistake, the path ahead is treacherous. The curse will try to divide us, to turn us against each other. Trust will be our most precious resource." Chenoa nodded, feeling a spark of hope ignite in her chest. She turned to address the gathered allies, her voice strong despite the fear and uncertainty churning within her. "I know I'm asking a lot of you. By helping me, you're risking everything. Your place in the pack, your relationships, maybe even your lives. But this isn't just about us anymore. If we fail, the consequences will reach far beyond Wolf's Hollow." She took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of the leadership her mother had tried to instill in her. "We have 3 days to save Wicasa, to free our people from a curse that has bound us for generations, and to prevent dark forces from gaining a foothold in our world. It won't be easy, but together, I believe we can succeed." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. Tasunka stepped forward, unrolling a map on the central table. Our first task is to locate the remaining fragments. We believe they're hidden in sacred sites across the territory, places of power that have been guarded by the elders for centuries. As the group gathered around the map, discussing strategy and forming teams, Chenoa felt a mix of determination and trepidation. The weight of destiny pressed down upon her, but for the first time since this ordeal began, she didn't feel crushed by it. However, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of her mind. If the elders had been protecting these fragments for so long, why hadn't they destroyed them? And how had her mother managed to discover their locations? As if sensing her unease, Tasunka drew her aside. There's something else you need to know, Chenoa. Something about your mother and about your own role in all of this. Chenoa braced herself, somehow knowing that whatever revelation was coming would change everything she thought she knew about herself and her place in the pack's complex history. Tasunka's eyes held a mixture of pride and sorrow as he began to speak, his words carrying the weight of long-buried truths finally brought to light. Tasunka's weathered hands gripped Chenoa's shoulders, his eyes searching hers as if gauging her readiness for the truth he was about to impart. The bustling activity of their allies faded into the background as Chenoa focused entirely on the medicine man's words. Your mother, Tasunka began, his voice low and heavy with significance, was more than just a member of our pack. She was a dreamwalker, a rare and powerful individual capable of traversing the barriers between our world and the spirit realm. Chenoa's breath caught in her throat. Dreamwalkers were the stuff of legend, spoken of in hushed tones around campfires, but never truly believed to exist. But how is that possible? And why didn't she ever tell me? Tasunka's expression grew pained. The gift of dreamwalking is both a blessing and a curse. It allowed your mother to uncover truths about our people's history that had been buried for generations, but it also made her a target. The elders feared her power, and the dark spirits. They saw her as a threat to their hold over our people. The pieces began to fall into place in Chenoa's mind. That's why she disappeared, isn't it? They didn't just silence her. They feared what she could do. Tasunka nodded grimly. Your mother knew the risks, but she was determined to break the curse. In the years leading up to her disappearance, she used her abilities to locate the hidden fragments and to lay the groundwork for what we're attempting now. A surge of pride and sorrow washed over Chenoa as she thought of her mother's bravery and sacrifice. But another question nagged at her. You said there was something about my role in all this. The old medicine man's gaze intensified. Chenoa, the gift of dreamwalking is hereditary. It often skips generations, manifesting in times of great need. Your mother believed that you would inherit her abilities, that you would be the key to finishing what she started. Chenoa's head spun with the implications. But I've never shown any signs of being a dreamwalker. Surely I would have known. The gift often lies dormant until it's needed most, Tasunka explained. And there are complications in your case. Your father... Before he could finish, a commotion erupted near the church entrance. Kiona burst through the group, her face pale with urgency. We've got company. Wikasa and a group of enforcers are heading this way. The sanctuary erupted into controlled chaos as Tasunka barked out orders. Seal the entrances. Activate the protection wards. We need to buy time. Chenoa's mind raced, torn between the need for immediate action and the burning questions left unanswered. As she moved to help fortify their position, Tasunka grabbed her arm. There's no time to explain. Everything now. But remember this. Your power is tied to your bloodline in ways you don't yet understand. When the moment comes, trust your instincts. With those cryptic words hanging in the air, they joined the others in preparing for the impending assault. Chenoa could hear the growing commotion outside. Angry voices, the splintering of wood as barricades were torn down. Suddenly, Wikasa's voice boomed through the air, magnified by some unnatural power that made the very walls of the church tremble. Chenoa, I know you're in there. Come out now, and I'll spare your conspirators. Continue this foolish rebellion, and you'll leave me no choice. Chenoa's heart ached at the mix of fury and desperation in his voice. Despite everything, a part of her still cared deeply for the man Wikasa had been. She stepped towards the door, but Kiona held her back. "You can't give yourself up," her friend insisted. "Everything we've worked for will be lost." "She's right," Tasunka agreed. "We need to find another way out. There's a hidden passage beneath the altar that leads to the old catacombs, if we can reach it." But before they could enact their escape plan, a deafening crash echoed through the sanctuary. The main doors burst inward in a shower of splinters, and Wikasa strode through the opening, flanked by a group of pack enforcers. His eyes glowed with that sickly amber light, and dark veins pulsed visibly beneath his skin. "Oh, Chenoa," he said, his voice a mixture of mockery and genuine pain. "Did you really think you could hide from me? That you could undo centuries of tradition and sacrifice on a misguided quest?" Chenoa stepped forward, placing herself between Wikasa and her allies. "This isn't you speaking, Wikasa. It's the curse. It's twisting everything you once stood for." For a moment, something flickered in Wikasa's eyes, a glimpse of the man she'd known. But then the amber glow intensified, and his features hardened. "You understand nothing. The spirits gave us strength when we were on the brink of extinction. They made us what we are, and now you would throw it all away? At what cost?" Chenoa challenged, her voice rising. "Look at what it's doing to you, to all of us. We're meant to protect our people, not terrorize them. To preserve our traditions, not be enslaved by them," Wikasa snarled, taking a menacing step forward. "Enough. I've tried to reason with you to make you see. But if you insist on clinging to these delusions," he raised a hand, dark energy crackling around his fingers, "then I'll do what I must to save our people, even if it means destroying the woman I love." Time seemed to slow as Wikasa unleashed a blast of corrupted power directly at Chenoa. She braced herself for the impact, knowing she had no defense against such magic. But in that moment of crisis, something awakened within her. The world around Chenoa blurred, colors shifting and melting together. She felt as if she were being pulled in two directions at once, anchored to the physical world, but also drawn towards something else. A realm of swirling mists and whispered secrets. "Focus, child." Tasunka's voice cut through the confusion. "You're on the threshold. Don't fight it. Let your instincts guide you." Chenoa took a deep breath, surrendering. To the strange sensations flooding through her, the physical world faded further, and she found herself standing in a misty landscape, surrounded by ethereal figures that seemed to be made of starlight and shadow. One of the figures stepped forward, its features resolving into a familiar face that made Chenoa's heart clench with recognition and longing. "Mother?" The spectral form of her mother smiled, reaching out a hand that Chenoa could almost feel. "My brave girl. I knew you would find your way here when the time came." "I don't understand," Chenoa said, her voice echoing strangely in this in-between place. "What is this? What's happening to me?" "You've awakened your dream-walking abilities," her mother explained. "This is the spirit realm, the place where the barriers between worlds grow thin. It's here that we can find the strength to face what's coming." Chenoa's mind raced with questions, but she forced herself to focus on the most pressing concern. "Wikasa. He's about to attack. How can I stop him without hurting him?" Her mother's expression grew somber. "The curse has its hooks in deep, but Wikasa isn't lost yet. Look beyond the physical. See the ties that bind him to the dark. Spirits. If you can sever those connections, even temporarily, it might give him a chance to break free." Chenoa nodded, determination filling her. "Show me how." As her mother began to instruct her in the ways of spirit sight and energy manipulation, Chenoa became aware of a tugging sensation, the physical world calling her back. She knew she couldn't stay in this realm for long, not without risking being lost between worlds. "Remember," her mother said urgently as the spirit realm began, "to fade, your power comes from more than just your dreamwalker heritage, your father." But before she could finish, Chenoa felt herself snapping back to the physical world. She blinked, disoriented, to find that mere seconds had passed since Wikasa's attack. The blast of dark energy was still hurtling towards her, but now she could see it for what it truly was, a writhing mass of corrupted spirit bonds. Acting on pure instinct, Chenoa reached out with her newfound abilities. She couldn't stop the attack entirely, but she managed to deflect its course, sending it crashing into a nearby pillar. The stone cracked and blackened where the energy struck. Wikasa stared at her in shock, his confidence wavering for the first time. How? What did you do? Chenoa stood tall, feeling the power of her awakened abilities coursing through her. I'm giving you a chance, Wikasa. Fight the curse. Remember who you really are. For a moment, the amber glow in Wikasa's eyes flickered, uncertainty crossing his features. But then he shook his head, snarling with renewed fury. Tricks and illusions. You'll pay for your defiance. As Wikasa prepared to launch another attack, Tasunka's voice rang out. Now, Chenoa, the passage. In the confusion of the standoff, Tasunka and the others had managed to open the hidden entrance beneath the altar. Chenoa knew she had only seconds to act. With a silent apology to Wikasa, she reached out with her Dreamwalker abilities, focusing on the spirit bonds that tethered him to the dark forces controlling him. She couldn't sever them completely, not yet. But she managed to weaken the connection just enough. Wikasa staggered, clutching his head in pain and confusion. It was the opening they needed. Go! Chenoa shouted to her allies, backing towards the hidden passage. I'll hold them off. As the others disappeared into the catacombs, Chenoa faced Wikasa one last time. I will find a way to save you, she promised. To save all of us. With that, she dove into the passage, using her newfound powers to collapse the entrance behind her. As darkness enveloped her and the sounds of pursuit faded, Chenoa's mind whirled with the implications of everything that had just happened. She had awakened abilities she never knew she possessed, glimpsed her long-lost mother in the spirit realm, and taken the first steps towards unraveling the curse that bound her people. But there were still so many unanswered questions. What was the truth about her father that both Tasunka and her mother had tried to reveal? How could she master her dreamwalking abilities in time to face the challenges ahead? And most pressingly, where would this hidden passage lead them? And what dangers awaited in the search for the remaining Covenant fragments? As Chenoa hurried to catch up with her allies in the twisting catacombs beneath Wolf's Hollow, she knew that the answers to these questions would shape not just her own destiny, but the fate of her entire people. The catacombs stretched before Chenoa like a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient stone, punctuated by the hurried footsteps of her allies as they navigated the twisting passages. Soft orbs of magical light, conjured by Tasunka, bobbed alongside them, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance with a life of their own. As they moved deeper into the underground network, Chenoa's mind raced, trying to process everything that day had happened in the sanctuary. The awakening of her Dreamwalker abilities, the glimpse of her mother in the spirit realm, and the realization that there was still so much about her own heritage she didn't understand. It all swirled in her thoughts like a tempest. Tasunka, she called out, her voice echoing slightly in the narrow passage. You were about to tell me something about my father before we were interrupted. What is it that I need to know? The old medicine man slowed his pace, allowing Chenoa to catch up to him. His face was a mask of conflicting emotions, concern, pride, and a hint of fear. Your lineage is complicated, Chenoa, more so than even your mother knew when she disappeared. Before he could elaborate, Kiona's voice cut through the darkness ahead. Hold up, there's something blocking the path. The group came to a halt, clustering around a section of the tunnel where the ceiling had partially collapsed. Chunks of stone and earth created a formidable barrier, with only a small opening near the top that might allow passage. We can't. Go back, one of the pack members, a wiry man named Ahote, said urgently. I can hear movement in the tunnels behind us. Wikasa and his enforcers must have found another way in. Chenoa felt a surge of determination. Then we go forward. I'll climb through first and see if I can clear some of the debris from the other side. As she began to scale the pile of rubble, Tasunka grabbed her arm. Be careful, he warned. These catacombs are ancient, and they hold more than just our people's physical history. The barriers between worlds are thin here. Chenoa nodded, understanding the implication. Her newfound Dreamwalker abilities might be both an asset and a liability in such a place. With careful movements, she squeezed through the narrow opening at the top of the blockage, emerging on the other side covered in dust, but unharmed. What she saw made her gasp. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber, its walls covered in intricate carvings and faded paintings that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. At the center stood a circle of standing stones, each easily twice, her height emanating a faint, pulsing energy that she could feel even from a distance. Chenoa? Kiona's worried voice came from the other side of the blockage. What do you see? It's incredible, Chenoa replied, her voice filled with awe. I think we found something important. There's a chamber here with some kind of ritual. Circle. She turned back to the rubble, intending to help clear a path for the others, when a flicker of movement caught her eye. Near one of the standing stones, a shadowy figure seemed to coalesce out of the very air. Chenoa tensed, ready for a confrontation, but as the figure solidified, she realized with a jolt that she recognized him. Father, she whispered, disbelief coloring her voice. The spectral form of her long-absent father turned to face her, a sad smile playing on his translucent features. My little wolf, he said, his voice echoing strangely in the chamber. You've grown so strong. Chenoa's mind reeled. Her father had disappeared when she was just a child, long before her mother's own vanishing act. The pack had always told her he'd been killed in a territorial dispute with a rival group, his body never recovered. But here he was, or at least some version of him, standing before her in this ancient place. How is this possible? Chenoa asked, taking a tentative step forward. Are you real? Her father's form flickered slightly like a candle flame in a breeze. As real as anything in this in-between place can be. I've been waiting for you, Chenoa. There's so much you need to know, so little time to explain it all. Before Chenoa could respond, a rumbling sound came from the blocked tunnel entrance. She turned to see stones shifting as her allies worked to clear a path. When she looked back, her father's spirit had moved closer to the center of the stone circle. Listen carefully, he said urgently. The curse that binds our people is more complex than you know. It's not just about power or control. It's about balance. The spirits our ancestors made a pact with, they're not inherently evil, but they've been corrupted over time by the very energy they've given us. Chenoa's brow furrowed in confusion. I don't understand. How can spirits be corrupted? And what does this have to do with me, with us? Her father's expression grew pained. Because of who we are, Chenoa. Your mother was a dreamwalker, yes, but I come from a different lineage altogether, one that was thought to be extinct long ago. A crashing sound interrupted them as the last of the rubble was cleared away. Tasunka, Kiona, and the others poured into the chamber, their eyes widening as they took in the ancient site. By the spirits, Tasunka breathed. The heart of the first pack. I never thought I'd see it with my own eyes. Chenoa turned back to where her father had been standing, but the spectral form had vanished. She felt a pang of loss and frustration at being so close to answers, only to have them slip away again. Kiona approached, placing a hand on Chenoa's shoulder. Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. I think I did, Chenoa replied, softly. Before she could explain further, a commotion from the tunnel entrance drew everyone's attention. Wikasa emerged from the shadows, his eyes blazing with that unnatural amber light. Behind him, a group of enforcers spread out, blocking any chance of escape. But something was different about the Alpha now. His movements were jerky, almost puppet-like, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to be layered with other, darker tones. Did you really think you could hide from us here? Wikasa snarled, but the words didn't seem entirely his own. This sacred place will be your tomb, rebels. The old ways will be preserved no matter the cost. Tasunka stepped forward, his weathered face set in grim determination. You speak with the voices of the corrupted spirits, not our true Alpha. Release him, Dark Ones. You have no power in this holy place. A chilling laugh erupted from Wikasa's throat, a sound that made Chenoa's skin crawl. Fool, this place is... the source of our power. Here, where the covenant was first sealed, we are at our strongest. As if to emphasize the point, tendrils of dark energy began to seep from the ground around Wikasa's feet, coiling around him like living shadows. The enforcers behind him shuddered, their eyes glazing over as the corrupting influence spread. Chenoa knew they were out of options. With the exit blocked and Wikasa more powerful than ever, there was only one choice left. She turned to Tasunka, her voice low and urgent. "The ritual circle. Can we use it?" The old medicine man's eyes widened in understanding. "It's dangerous, Chenoa. Without proper preparation, tapping into that kind of power could tear the veil between worlds, but—" He glanced at the advancing threat. "We may have no other choice." Chenoa nodded, a plan forming in her mind. "Get everyone inside the circle. I'll try to hold them off while you prepare whatever ritual you can." Kiona grabbed her arm, panic clear in her eyes. "Are you insane? You can't face them alone." "I won't be alone," Chenoa replied, a newfound certainty in her voice. She could feel her dreamwalker abilities stirring, responding to the ancient power that permeated this place. "Go. I'll buy you as much time as I can." As her allies retreated to the stone circle, Chenoa stepped forward to confront Wikasa and the corrupted enforcers. She took a deep breath, centering herself the way her mother had shown her in that brief spirit realm encounter. "Last chance." "Wikasa," she called out, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. "Fight the influence, remember who you really are." For a moment, something flickered in Wikasa's eyes, a glimpse of recognition, of the man he had been. But then the darkness surged, and he lunged forward with inhuman speed. Chenoa reacted on instinct, reaching out with her dreamwalker abilities. The world around her seemed to blur, physical reality overlapping with the spirit realm. She could see the corrupted energy that flowed through Wikasa and the enforcers, pulsing like dark veins. As Wikasa's clawed hand slashed towards her, Chenoa ducked and spun, her movements guided by something beyond physical reflexes. She focused on the spirit bonds she could now perceive, searching for weak points, for any way to disrupt the dark influence. Behind her she could hear Tasunka's voice rising in an ancient chant, the words resonating with the power of the stone circle. The air grew thick with energy, making it hard to breathe. Chenoa dodged another attack, this time managing to land. A counterstrike. Her hand, wreathed in a soft blue light, struck Wikasa's chest. For a brief moment, the corruption in him recoiled, and she saw a flicker of the real Wikasa surface. "Chenoa," he gasped, confusion and pain warring in his eyes. "What's happening to me?" "Fight it," she urged, hope surging within her. "You're stronger than their influence." But the moment passed too quickly. The darkness surged back and Wikasa roared in fury. He backhanded Chenoa with supernatural strength, sending her flying across the chamber. She hit the ground hard, her vision swimming. As she struggled to her feet, she saw the corrupted enforcers advancing on her allies. In the stone circle, Tasunka's chanting had reached a fever pitch, the standing stones now glowing with an inner light. Chenoa knew she had to act fast. Drawing on every ounce of her newfound power, she reached out not just with her body, but with her spirit. She could feel the layers of reality thinning around her, the barriers between worlds becoming permeable, and then, like a veil lifting, she saw them. The true forms of the corrupted spirits that had bound themselves to her people centuries ago. They weren't the malevolent entities she had imagined, but rather twisted, tormented beings, warped by generations of misuse and fear. In that moment of clarity, Chenoa understood what her father had been trying to tell her. The curse wasn't just about breaking a pact, it was about healing a wound that had festered for far too long. With a cry that seemed to come from the very depths of her soul, Chenoa thrust her hands forward. Pure, radiant energy erupted from her palms, washing over Wikasa and the enforcers. The corrupted spirits howled, their dark influence momentarily disrupted. In the stone circle, Tasunka's ritual reached its climax. The standing stones flared with blinding light, and Chenoa felt a surge of power unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if the very essence of her people, past, present, and future, was flowing through her. As the light engulfed the chamber, Chenoa caught a glimpse of familiar faces in the spirit realm. Her mother, her father, and countless ancestors she had never known. Their voices joined in a chorus of support and guidance. "Remember who you are," her father's voice echoed in her mind. "You carry the blood of dreamwalkers and something far older. You are the bridge between worlds, the key to breaking the cycle." With a final surge of effort, Chenoa directed the combined power of the ritual and her own abilities towards the heart of the corruption. The chamber filled with a deafening roar, and for a moment, it seemed as if reality itself was tearing at the seams. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The light faded, leaving the chamber in a state of stunned silence. Chenoa swayed on her feet, exhausted beyond measure but still standing. Wikasa and the enforcers lay unconscious on the ground, the dark energy that had possessed them dissipated. In the spirit realm, Chenoa could see the ancient spirits beginning to take on their true forms once more, free from the corruption that had twisted them for so long. As her allies emerged from the stone circle, looks of awe and disbelief on their faces, Chenoa knew that this was only the beginning. The curse might be broken, but its effects would linger. There was still so much healing to be done, so many truths to uncover. But for the first time since this journey began, Chenoa felt a genuine sense of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them, not just as a dream walker or the daughter of forgotten legacies, but as someone who had found her true strength in the bonds of family, friendship, and the unbreakable spirit of her people. As Tasunka approached, his eyes shining with pride and newfound respect, Chenoa squared her shoulders. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. The old medicine man smiled, gesturing to the unconscious forms of Wikasa and the others. "Now we begin the real work of healing, and you, Chenoa, have a destiny to uncover, one that I suspect will take you far beyond the boundaries of Wolf's Hollow." Chenoa nodded, her gaze drawn to the tunnel entrance where she knew a new chapter of her journey awaited. Whatever secrets her heritage held, whatever challenges the future might bring, she was ready to face them head-on. The journey back through the catacombs was a solemn procession. Chenoa and Kiona supported the still unconscious Wikasa between them, while the others carried the enforcers who had fallen under the curse's influence. Tasunka led the way, his magical lights illuminating a path that seemed both familiar and utterly changed in the wake of what had transpired in the heart of the first pack. As they navigated the twisting tunnels, Chenoa's mind whirled with questions. The revelation about her dual heritage, Dreamwalker on her mother's side and something even more ancient from her father, weighed heavily on her thoughts. She could feel her newfound abilities simmering just beneath the surface, like a well of power waiting to be tapped. "Tasunka," she called out softly, careful not to disturb the eerie quiet that had fallen over the group. "What my father said about another lineage, one thought to be extinct. What did he mean?" The old medicine man slowed his pace, allowing Chenoa to draw level with him. His face was etched with lines of exhaustion, but his eyes gleamed with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "It is a long and complex tale, one that goes back to the very origins of our people. But the short answer, Chenoa, is that you carry the blood of the spirit weavers." Kiona, who had been listening intently, gasped. "Spirit weavers? But they're just legends, stories told around the fire to scare pups." Tasunka shook his head, a wry smile playing at his lips. "Many truths have been hidden in those scary stories, young one. The spirit weavers were real, and they were perhaps the most powerful members of our kind to ever walk this earth." As they continued their slow progress through the catacombs, Tasunka explained in hushed tones. "The spirit weavers," he said, "were not just shifters, but beings who could move freely between the physical and spirit realms. They were the original mediators between the mortal world and the spirit beings that would later be bound by the curse. But their power came at a great cost," Tasunka continued, his voice heavy with the weight of hidden history. "The spirit weavers were hunted, both by those who feared their abilities and those who sought to control them. It was believed that the last of their kind had perished centuries ago, long before the curse was ever cast." Chenoa's mind reeled with the implications. "So my father, he was a spirit weaver? But how? And why didn't anyone know? Tasunka's expression grew somber. Your father's true nature was hidden, even from himself, for many years. It was only when he met your mother, when their combined bloodlines awakened something dormant within him, that he began to understand the truth of his heritage. A lump formed in Chenoa's throat as she thought of her parents, the mother who had disappeared in her quest to break the curse, and the father who had vanished even earlier, perhaps fleeing the very legacy she now found herself heir to. Is that why they left? She asked, unable to keep the hint of bitterness from her voice. To protect me? Or because they were afraid of what I might become? Tasunka's hand on her shoulder was comforting, his voice gentle but firm. Your parents loved you more than anything in this world, Chenoa. They left to find answers, to try and break the curse before it could touch you. But the forces aligned against them were powerful. And the cost? He trailed off, leaving the tragic ending unspoken. As they neared the exit to the catacombs, a soft groan from Wikasa drew their attention. The Alpha's eyes fluttered open, confusion and pain evident in his gaze. Chenoa? What happened? Where are we? Chenoa exchanged a quick glance with Tasunka before addressing Wikasa. You were under the influence of the curse, but it's been broken now. How much do you remember? Wikasa's brow furrowed as he struggled to piece together fragmented memories. I remember anger, a darkness consuming me, and then your light, pushing it back. His eyes widened as more recollections surfaced. The things I did, the people I hurt. How can I ever make amends? You were not in control of your actions, Tasunka assured him, though his tone held a note of caution. But the road to healing and rebuilding trust will be a long one, for all of us. As they emerged from the catacombs into the fading light of day, Chenoa was struck by how different everything looked. Wolf's Hollow spread out before them, the same buildings and streets she had known all her life, and yet it all seemed somehow changed. Or perhaps, she realized, it was she who had changed. News of what had transpired in the heart of the first pack spread quickly through the pack. Curious and wary faces peered out from windows and doorways as Chenoa and her allies made their way towards the pack's central meeting grounds. By the time they reached the large clearing ringed by ancient oaks, it seemed the entire community had gathered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as they caught sight of Wikasa, their once strong Alpha now leaning heavily on Chenoa and Kiona for support. The elders, those who had for so long guarded the secrets that had nearly destroyed them all, stood at the front of the assembly, their faces a mix of fear and resignation. Tasunka stepped forward, his voice ringing out with authority that belied his aged appearance. The curse that has bound our people for generations has been broken. The truth of our history, long hidden, must now be brought to light. As the old medicine man began to recount the events that had led to this moment, Chenoa found her attention drawn to the fringes of the crowd. There, half hidden in the lengthening shadows of the trees, she caught glimpses of familiar faces, not physical beings but spirits. Her mother and father stood side by side, pride and love shining in their ethereal eyes. Behind them, ranks of ancestors stretched back as far as she could see, each one a link in the chain of history that had led to this moment. A gentle touch on her arm brought Chenoa's focus back to the physical realm. Kiona was looking at her with a mixture of awe and concern. Your eyes, she whispered. They were glowing just now. Are you okay? Chenoa nodded, offering her friend a reassuring smile. I'm fine, just seeing things a little differently now. As Tasunka's explanation drew to a close, a hush fell over the gathered pack. All eyes turned to Wikasa, who had straightened up, shrugging off support to stand on his own. The Alpha's face was etched with remorse as he addressed his people. I have failed you, he began, his voice hoarse with emotion. The very power I thought would protect us nearly destroyed everything we hold dear. I cannot undo the harm I've caused, but I swear by all that is sacred that I will spend every day working to rebuild the trust I've shattered. Wikasa's gaze found Chenoa, and he inclined his head in a gesture of deep respect. We owe our salvation to Chenoa, to the courage of those who stood against the darkness, and to truths long buried that have finally come to light. The old ways have failed us. It is time for a new path, one of openness, of balance between our world and the spirit realm. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, but Chenoa could see uncertainty and fear in many faces. Generations of secrecy and rigid tradition would not be easily overcome. Feeling a sudden surge of clarity, Chenoa stepped forward. She could sense her dual heritage thrumming through her veins, dreamwalker and spirit weaver, combined into something entirely new. When she spoke, her voice carried a quiet power that seemed to resonate with the very earth beneath their feet. "We stand at a crossroads," she began, her words reaching every ear in the clearing. "For too long, we've been bound by a curse born of fear and misunderstanding. But that curse also protected us, gave us strength when we needed it most. Now, we have a chance to forge a new relationship with the spirit world, not as masters or slaves, but as partners." Chenoa's gaze swept across the assembled pack, meeting eyes both skeptical and hopeful. "The road ahead won't be easy. We'll need to relearn so much of what we thought we knew, to heal wounds both seen and unseen, but we don't have to do it alone." As if responding to an unspoken cue, shimmering forms began to materialize around the edges of the clearing. Spirits of all shapes and sizes, some recognizable as ancestors, others utterly alien in their beauty and strangeness. The pack gasped collectively, many shrinking back in fear. But Chenoa stood tall, a bridge between worlds. "These are not our enemies," she declared. "They are as much a part of this land, of our history, as we are. It's time. We remembered how to coexist, how to learn from each other." One of the elders, a woman named Namid, who had always seemed stern and unyielding, stepped forward. Her face was a mask of conflicting emotions as she addressed Chenoa. "You speak of cooperation, of a new way forward. But how can we trust these spirits after all that's happened? How can we be sure this isn't just another trick, another trap?" Chenoa met the elder's gaze steadily. "Because we'll approach this with open eyes and open hearts. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. We'll establish new rituals, new ways of communication that don't require binding or coercion. It won't be perfect, and there will be challenges, but it's the only way to truly move forward." She turned to Tasunka, including him and Wikasa in her next words. "We'll need guidance from those who remember the old ways, and leadership from those who have seen the dangers of unchecked power. But most of all, we'll need the courage to face our fears and embrace change." A thoughtful silence fell over the gathering. Chenoa could almost feel the weight of history shifting, old paradigms crumbling as new possibilities took root. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Wikasa was the first to break the silence. With effort, he lowered himself to one knee before Chenoa, head bowed in a gesture of submission that sent shockwaves through the pack. "You have shown us the way forward," he said, his voice carrying clearly despite its softness. "I may no longer be worthy to lead, but I pledge myself to this new path, to helping our people heal and grow." One by one, others began to follow Wikasa's example. Tasunka, the elders, members of the pack both young and old. They knelt or bowed their heads, acknowledging Chenoa not just as a hero who had broken the curse, but as a leader for this new era. Chenoa felt overwhelmed by the display, but she also felt a sense of rightness, of pieces falling into place. This was what she had been born for, what generations of her family's hidden legacy had been building towards. "Rise," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We go forward together, as equals. There will be no more bowing, no more blind submission. From this day on, we forge our path through understanding and mutual respect." As the pack rose to their feet, Chenoa felt a warm presence at her side. Though invisible to most, she could clearly see the spectral forms of her parents standing beside her, their hands resting on her shoulders in a gesture of pride and support. "You've done well, little wolf," her father's voice whispered in her mind. "But this is just the beginning. There is so much more for you to learn, so many wrongs still to be righted." Chenoa nodded almost imperceptibly, knowing the truth of his words. Breaking the curse had been a monumental task, but rebuilding her, People's relationship with the spirit world, healing the wounds of generations of secrecy and fear. That would be the work of a lifetime. As the gathering began to disperse, plans already being made for the changes to come, Chenoa found herself looking to the horizon. Beyond Wolf's Hollow lay a world that knew nothing of their struggles, of the delicate balance between realms that had been disrupted and was now on the verge of healing. She knew, with a certainty that came from both her Dreamwalker intuition and her newly awakened Spirit Weaver heritage, that her journey was far from over. There were other packs out there, other communities of shifters, and perhaps even humans, who were unknowingly affected by the ripples of their curse. Kiona approached, excitement shining in her eyes despite the exhaustion evident in her posture. "So, oh great leader," she said with a teasing grin, "what's our next move?" Chenoa smiled, grateful for her friend's unwavering support. "First, we rest and heal. We've all been through so much, and there's still a lot of work to do here in Wolf's Hollow." Her gaze drifted back to the distant mountains. "But after that, I think it might be time for us to venture beyond our borders. There's a whole world out there that might need what we've learned." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, Chenoa felt a sense of peace settle over her. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges she could only begin to imagine. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly connected to her heritage, to her people, and to the vast, mysterious spirit world that had always been just beyond her reach. With a deep breath, Chenoa turned back to her assembled pack, ready to take the first steps into their new future. The curse was broken, but their true journey was only just beginning. The weeks following the breaking of the curse were a whirlwind of activity in Wolf's Hollow. The pack, long accustomed to secrecy and rigid hierarchy, struggled to adapt to the new reality Chenoa had ushered in. Old grudges and fears bubbled to the surface, threatening to derail the fragile peace that had been established. Chenoa found herself at the center of it all, mediating disputes, teaching others to connect with the spirit realm, and working tirelessly to bridge the gap between generations of tradition and the new path forward. It was exhausting, often frustrating work, but she could see progress being made, slowly but surely. One crisp autumn morning, Chenoa stood atop a hill overlooking the village, watching as members of the pack went about their daily routines. Kiona approached, carrying 2 steaming mugs of herbal tea. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing one to Chenoa. "You've barely slept in days." Chenoa accepted the mug gratefully, inhaling the soothing aroma. "There's so much to do, Kiona. Every time I think we're making progress, something else comes up. Did you hear about the fight that broke out in the market yesterday?" Kiona nodded grimly. "Over whether to allow spirits to trade for goods, right? I heard it got pretty heated." "That's putting it mildly," Chenoa sighed. "Change is hard, especially for those who've known nothing but the old ways their entire lives." As they stood in companionable silence, sipping their tea, Chenoa's attention was drawn to a disturbance at the edge of the village. A small group had gathered, their voices raised in what sounded like alarm. Without a word, Chenoa and Kiona rushed down the hill to investigate. They arrived to find Tasunka and Wikasa already there, trying to calm a visibly shaken young woman. Chenoa recognized her as Ayana, one of the pack's scouts. "What happened?" Chenoa asked, her voice cutting through the commotion. Ayana turned to her, eyes wide with fear and confusion. "I was patrolling the eastern border when I saw them, a group of outsiders heading this way. But that's not all." She hesitated, as if afraid to voice what she'd seen. "Go on," Wikasa encouraged gently, his manner a far cry from the domineering alpha he had once been. Ayana took a deep breath. "They were accompanied by spirits. Not just any spirits, but ones I've never seen before, ancient and powerful, and they were asking for you, Chenoa, by name." A hush fell over the gathered crowd. Chenoa felt a chill run down her spine, not of fear, but of anticipation. She had known somehow that their actions would have consequences beyond Wolf's Hollow. It seemed those consequences were now quite literally on their doorstep. Tasunka's weathered face was creased with concern. "This is unprecedented," In all our recorded history, we've never had direct contact with other shifter packs, let alone ones traveling openly with spirits. Chenoa nodded, her mind racing. How long until they reach us? A day, maybe less, Ayana replied. They're moving. Fast. Wikasa stepped forward, his posture tense but controlled. We should prepare for their arrival. If they come in peace, we'll welcome them. If not, he trailed off, leaving the implication hanging in the air. No, Chenoa said firmly. We won't meet them with suspicion and fear. That's the old way of thinking, the very thing we're trying to change. She turned to address the growing crowd. Spread the word. We'll welcome these visitors with open arms and open minds. Let's show them what Wolf's Hollow has become. As the group dispersed, to make preparations, Kiona pulled Chenoa aside. Are you sure about this? We don't know anything about these outsiders or their intentions. Chenoa placed a reassuring hand on her friend's shoulder. I'm sure. This is the moment we've been working towards. A chance to share what we've learned, to start healing the rifts not just within our pack, but between all our kind. The next day dawned bright and clear, a crispness in the air hinting at the coming winter. The entire pack had gathered at the village's main entrance, a mixture of excitement and apprehension palpable in the crowd. Chenoa stood at the forefront, flanked by Tasunka, Wikasa, and Kiona, ready to greet their mysterious visitors. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, a rustling from the nearby forest signaled the approach of the outsiders. Chenoa felt her breath catch in her throat as the first figures emerged from the tree line. They were a diverse group, their appearances suggesting origins from various parts of the world. At the lead was a tall, statuesque woman with skin the color of rich earth and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Beside her walked a man of Asian descent, his movements fluid and graceful like a stalking cat. But it was their companions that truly drew gasps from the assembled pack. Shimmering forms of spirits floated alongside the shifters, some taking on almost human appearances, others manifesting as swirling patterns of light and energy. Chenoa could sense their immense power, far greater than any of the local spirits she had encountered. As the group approached, Chenoa stepped forward to meet them. The tall woman inclined her head in a gesture of respect. Greetings, Chenoa of Wolf's Hollow, she said, her voice rich and melodious. I am a Days of the Savannah Pride, and these are my companions from packs across the world. We have come in response to the great shift in the spirit realm, a shift that led us directly to you. Chenoa bowed slightly in return. Welcome to Wolf's Hollow. We are honored by your presence and eager to learn from you. Adaizi's eyes twinkled with approval. And we from you, young one. What you have accomplished here, breaking an ancient curse, reforging the bonds between shifters and spirits. It has sent ripples through both realms. We felt it, even from across vast distances. The Asian man stepped forward, introducing himself as Hiroshi of the Mountain Clan. For generations, our packs have struggled with similar curses, each believing we were alone in our trials. But when we felt the shift, when the spirits began, speaking of a new balance being struck, we knew we had to seek out its source. Chenoa felt a wave of emotion wash over her, relief at not being alone in this journey, excitement at the prospect of learning from others who had faced similar challenges, and a touch of trepidation at the responsibility that came with being at the center of such monumental change. Please, she said, gesturing towards the village, come and rest. We have much to discuss. As the visitors were shown to prepared accommodations, Chenoa couldn't help but notice the way her pack members were reacting. Some seemed in awe of the newcomers and their spirit companions, while others hung back, wariness evident in their postures. It was a stark reminder of how far they had come and how far they still had to go. Later that evening, a great feast was held in honor of their guests. The central clearing had been transformed, with long tables groaning under the weight of food and drink. Spirits mingled freely with the physical beings, creating an atmosphere unlike anything Wolf's Hollow had ever seen. As the celebration was in full swing, Adaizi drew Chenoa aside. Walk with me, she said. her tone making it clear this was more than a casual invitation. They strolled to the edge of the clearing, where the sounds of revelry faded into the background. Adizi's spirit companion, a magnificent lioness made of starlight, padded silently beside them. "You've done a remarkable thing here, Chenoa," Adizi began. "Breaking a curse that has bound your people for generations, opening the way for true cooperation between shifters and spirits. But I sense you know this is only the beginning." Chenoa nodded, feeling the weight of unspoken responsibilities settling on her shoulders. There's still so much to learn, so much healing to be done, and not just here in Wolf's Hollow. Adizi's expression grew serious. "You're right. What's happened here is a catalyst, but the effects are spreading far beyond your borders. Other packs are feeling the shift, questioning traditions that have gone unchallenged for centuries, and not all of them are reacting with open minds." A chill ran down Chenoa's spine. "You mean there's resistance? Opposition to what we're trying to achieve?" "I'm afraid so," Adizi confirmed. "There are those who see the old ways, the subjugation of spirits, the rigid hierarchies, as the only path to power and stability. They view what you've done here as a threat to everything they believe in." Chenoa's mind raced with the implications. "Is that why you've really come? To warn us?" Adizi's smile was both proud and sad. "To warn you, yes, but also to prepare you. The changes you've set in motion cannot be undone, Chenoa. The world of shifters and spirits is evolving, and you, with your unique heritage and the bonds you've forged, are at the heart of it all." The lioness spirit let out a low rumble, as if emphasizing Adizi's words. Chenoa felt a resonance deep within her, her dreamwalker and spirit weaver bloodlines responding to the ancient power. "What do I need to do?" Chenoa asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions inside her. Adiz placed a hand on Chenoa's shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "First, you must complete your training. Your abilities are remarkable, but raw. You've only scratched the surface of what you're truly capable of." She gestured back towards the feast, where Hiroshi and the other visitors were engaged in animated conversation with members of Wolf's Hollow. "Each of us has something to teach you, techniques and knowledge passed down through our own packs for generations. And in turn, we hope to learn from you, to understand how you've achieved what our ancestors only dreamed of." Chenoa's head spun with the possibilities. "And after that?" Adizi's eyes gleamed with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "After that, we journey beyond Wolf's Hollow. There are other packs out there, struggling with their own curses, their own imbalances between the physical and spirit realms. They need guidance, hope, and sometimes intervention." The implications of Adizi's words settled over Chenoa like a mantle. This was more than just healing her own pack or correcting a local imbalance. This was about reshaping the very nature of the relationship between shifters, spirits, and perhaps even the human world beyond. "It won't be easy," Adizi continued, her voice gentle but firm. "You'll face opposition, skepticism, and sometimes outright hostility. The path you've chosen, the path that has chosen you, is one of great responsibility and potential danger." Chenoa took a deep breath, feeling the weight of destiny settling upon her. But along with that weight came a sense of purpose, of rightness. This was what she had been preparing for her entire life, even if she hadn't known it. "I understand," she said, her voice steady and resolved. "When do we begin?" Adizi's smile was radiant with pride and hope. "We've already begun, young one. Every step you've taken, every choice you've made, has led you to this moment. But tomorrow, your real training starts." As they turned back towards the celebration, Chenoa's gaze swept over the gathered crowd, her pack members mingling with the visitors, spirits dancing in the firelight, old boundaries and prejudices slowly melting away. She saw Kiona deep in conversation with Hiroshi, her eyes alight with curiosity. Tasunka and Wikasa were seated with some of the other pack leaders, their expressions intent as they discussed what could only be weighty matters. This was the future she had dreamed of, the harmony between worlds that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. But it was fragile, this new balance, and there were forces out there that would seek to destroy it before it could take root. Chenoa squared her shoulders, feeling a surge of determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever opposition they might face, she was ready. With the wisdom of her ancestors, the support of her pack, and the guidance of these new allies, she would fight to protect this fragile new world they were building. As the night wore on and the festivities continued, Chenoa found herself looking to the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the boundaries of Wolf's Hollow, other packs were struggling, other curses were waiting to be broken, and she would be there to help them, to show them the way towards a new future, one of balance, understanding, and harmony between all realms. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but as Chenoa looked around at the joyous celebration, at the blending of shifters and spirits from across the world, she knew it was a journey worth taking, for in that moment she could see the first glimmers of a world transformed, a world where the barriers between realms were not walls to be feared, but bridges to be crossed. Dawn broke over Wolf's Hollow, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold. Chenoa stood at the edge of the village, her pack gathered behind her, watching as Adeze and the other visitors made final preparations for departure. The air thrummed with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This was the day Chenoa would leave her home, embarking on a journey that would take her far beyond the familiar forests and mountains. Kiona approached, a well-worn backpack slung over her shoulder. "Ready for this?" she asked, a hint of nervousness in her voice. Chenoa nodded, grateful for her friend's unwavering support. "As ready as I'll ever be. Are you sure about coming along? It could be dangerous." Kiona's response was a playful punch to Chenoa's arm. "Try and stop me. Someone's got to watch your back out there in the big bad world." Their banter was interrupted by Tasunka, who approached with Wikasa at his side. The old medicine man's eyes were misty with emotion, while the former alpha's face was a mask of determined resolve. "Chenoa," Tasunka began, his voice rough with feeling, "you carry with you not just your own destiny, but the hopes and dreams of our entire pack. Remember all that you have learned here, and know that our spirits go with you, always." Wikasa stepped forward, extending a small, intricately carved wooden box. "This contains sacred herbs and totems from our land," he explained. "Use them in times of need, to reconnect with your roots and draw strength from your ancestors." Chenoa accepted the gift with reverence, touched by the gesture. She looked out at the assembled pack, faces she had known all her life, now looking to her with a mixture of pride, hope, and no small amount of fear. The weight of their expectations settled heavily on her shoulders. "I won't let you down," she promised, her voice carrying across the gathering. "What we've started here in Wolf's Hollow is just the beginning. I'll carry our message of harmony between shifters and spirits to every corner of the world if I have to." A cheer went up from the crowd, a sound filled with both celebration and farewell. As Chenoa turned to join Adeze and the others, she felt a familiar presence at her side. Though invisible to most, she could clearly see the spectral forms of her parents, their faces beaming with pride. "We are so proud of you, little wolf," her mother's voice whispered on the wind. "Remember, your greatest strength lies not in your powers but in your heart." Her father's spirit nodded in agreement. "Trust in yourself, Chenoa. The path ahead is uncertain, but you have the wisdom of generations guiding your steps." With a final wave to her pack, Chenoa fell into step beside Adeze. The diverse group of shifters and their spirit companions made for an impressive sight as they set off down the winding path that would take them beyond Wolf's Hollow's borders. As they traveled, Adeze began Chenoa's training in earnest. Each day brought new lessons, pushing the limits of her Dreamwalker and Spirit Weaver abilities. Hiroshi taught her techniques for blending seamlessly between the physical and spirit realms, while a fierce shifter named Zara from the Desert Clans showed her how to communicate with spirits across vast distances. Weeks turned into months as they journeyed from pack to pack. In each new territory, Chenoa witnessed firsthand the struggles faced by shifters trying to maintain balance with the spirit world. Some welcomed their message of harmony eagerly, while others viewed them with suspicion and hostility. It was In a remote mountain village, nestled high in the Andes, that Chenoa faced her first true test. The local pack had been ravaged by a curse similar to the one that had plagued Wolf's Hollow, but far more virulent. Their alpha, a once noble leader named Mateo, had been corrupted into a tyrant who used enslaved spirits to maintain his iron grip on power. As Chenoa and her companions approached the village, the very air seemed to crackle with malevolent energy. Dark, twisted forms of spirits writhed at the edges of her vision, their anguished cries sending chills down her spine. "This is worse than we thought," Adaize murmured, her usual composure shaken. "The imbalance here. It's tearing at the very fabric between realms." Chenoa steeled herself, drawing on all she had learned. "Then we have to act fast, before it's too late for both the shifters and the spirits trapped here." Their arrival in the village square was met with a mixture of fear and desperate hope from the haggard-looking pack members. But before Chenoa could address them, a bone-chilling roar split the air. Mateo, twisted almost beyond recognition by the corrupting influence of the enslaved spirits, burst from the largest building. "Intruders!" he snarled, his voice layered with otherworldly tones. "You dare bring your blasphemous ideas to my domain?" Chenoa stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. "We come in peace, Mateo. We're here to help, to show you a better way." Her words were cut short as Mateo lunged, moving with unnatural speed. But Chenoa was ready. Calling upon her Spirit Weaver heritage, she shifted partially into the spirit realm, allowing Mateo's attack to pass harmlessly through her. What followed was a battle unlike anything Chenoa had experienced before. As Adaize and the others worked to protect the villagers and begin freeing the enslaved spirits, Chenoa faced off against Mateo in a contest that spanned both the physical and spirit realms. She could feel the corrupted Alpha's power, a dark, roiling mass of stolen spirit energy. But she could also sense the real Mateo buried beneath layers of pain and fear. Drawing on every lesson, every ounce of her dual heritage, Chenoa fought not to destroy, but to heal. "Remember who you are," she called out, her voice carrying the weight of both command and compassion. "You're more than this curse, Mateo. You're a protector, a leader. Your pack needs you." For a moment, Mateo's attacks faltered. Chenoa saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes, a hint of the noble shifter he had once been. Seizing the opportunity, she reached out with her Dreamwalker abilities, creating a bridge between their minds. In an instant, she was plunged into a maelstrom of Mateo's memories and emotions. She saw the weight of responsibility that had driven him to seek more power, the fear of failing his people that had made him vulnerable to the curse's influence, and beneath it all, a desperate longing for the harmony with the spirit world that had been lost. "It's not too late," Chenoa whispered, her words echoing through both their minds. "Let me show you another way." With that, she opened herself, fully, allowing Mateo to experience through her the breaking of Wolf's Hollow's curse, the joy of true partnership with spirits, the strength that came from balance rather than domination. The mental connection shattered as Mateo let out a heart-wrenching howl. Chenoa watched in awe as the corrupted energy that had engulfed him began to dissipate, revealing the true form of the Alpha beneath. Around them, the enslaved spirits broke free of their bonds, their cries of anguish turning to songs of liberation. As the dust settled, Chenoa found herself supporting a weakened but clear-eyed Mateo. The village erupted in cheers as pack members rushed forward, embracing their restored leader and welcoming the newly freed spirits with open arms. Adaize approached, her face beaming with pride. "Well done, Chenoa. I don't think I've ever seen a curse broken with such compassion." Chenoa smiled, exhausted but exhilarated. "It's what you've all been teaching me. True strength comes not from domination, but from understanding and balance." As the group spent the next few days helping the village adjust to their new reality, Chenoa found herself reflecting on how far she'd come. Each challenge faced, each pack helped, added another layer to her understanding of the complex relationship between shifters and spirits. But she also realized that their work was far from over. News reached them of other packs facing similar struggles, and whispers of a growing movement that opposed the changes they were bringing about. One evening, As they prepared to move on to their next destination, Kiona found Chenoa deep in thought, at the edge of the village. "Credit for your thoughts?" she asked, settling down beside her friend. Chenoa sighed, gesturing at the starry sky above. "I can feel it, Kiona. With every pack we help, every curse we break, we're changing the world. But I can also sense the resistance growing. There are forces out there that don't want this new balance we're creating." Kiona nodded solemnly. Adai's mentioned something similar. Apparently, there are rumors of an alliance forming between packs that want to maintain the old ways of spirit subjugation. They see what we're doing as a threat to their power. Chenoa's expression hardened with resolve. "Then we'll just have to work harder, move faster. We can't let fear and the lust for power undo everything we've accomplished." As if in response to her words, a cool breeze swept through the village, carrying with it whispers from the spirit realm. Chenoa closed her eyes, focusing on the messages being conveyed. When she opened them again, there was a new fire burning in her gaze. "We need to call a gathering," she said, her voice filled with sudden urgency. "Not just of the packs we've helped, but of all those who are willing to embrace this new way of coexistence with the spirit world." Kiona's eyes widened in understanding. "You mean like a grand council? But where? How?" Chenoa stood, her mind racing with possibilities. "There's a place I've seen in my dreams, a nexus where the physical and spirit realms intersect. If we can find it, it would be the perfect location to bring shifters and spirits together from all over the world." As they hurried to share this new development with Adais and the others, Chenoa felt a surge of both excitement and trepidation. What she was proposing was unprecedented, a gathering that could reshape the very foundations of shifter society and their relationship with the spirit world. But she also knew that such a gathering would paint a target on their backs. Those who opposed their movement would see it as the perfect opportunity to strike, to snuff out the spark of change before it could ignite a global transformation. As plans began to take shape and messages were sent out to allied packs, Chenoa found herself standing at the precipice of a new chapter in her journey. The challenges ahead would dwarf anything she had faced before, testing not just her abilities, but her leadership, her vision for the future, and her capacity to unite disparate groups under a common cause. But as she looked around at her companions, Kiona's unwavering support, Adai's wisdom, Hiroshi's calm strength, and the bonds they'd forged with shifters and spirits across the world, Chenoa knew that she wasn't facing these challenges alone. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but it was also filled with hope. Hope for a world where shifters and spirits could coexist in harmony, where ancient power could be wielded with wisdom and compassion, and where the barriers between realms were bridges to be crossed rather than walls to be feared. As the first light of dawn broke over the mountains, Chenoa squared her shoulders, ready to take the next step on this grand adventure. The world was changing, and she was at the heart of that change. Whatever came next, she would face it with courage, with the strength of her dual heritage, and with the unshakable belief that together, they could forge a better future for all. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity as Chenoa and her companions raced against time to organize the unprecedented gathering. Messages were sent via spirit couriers to allied packs across the globe, while Chenoa and Adaizi spent long hours in meditation, seeking the exact location of the nexus point Chenoa had seen in her visions. It was during one of these deep meditative sessions that Chenoa finally pinpointed the location. Her eyes snapped open, a look of wonder and excitement on her face. "I've found it," she breathed, her voice filled with awe. "It's an island, hidden from the world by ancient magics. A place where the veil between realms is so thin that spirits and physical beings can coexist without effort." Adais leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with interest. "Can you describe it?" Chenoa closed her eyes again, drawing upon the vivid images from her vision. Crystal clear waters surround it, with beaches of sand that shimmer like stardust. At its heart is a grove of trees older than time itself, their branches reaching into both our world and the spirit realm, and at the center of the grove. She paused, her brow furrowing in concentration. "There's a stone circle, similar to the one in Wolf's Hollow, but far more ancient and powerful. As Chenoa shared her vision with the others, excitement rippled through the group. This hidden island seemed like the perfect location for their gathering, neutral ground where shifters and spirits from all corners of the world could come together. But with excitement came new challenges. How would they transport so many to a hidden location? How could they ensure the safety of all attendees, while also keeping the island's existence a secret from those who might seek to disrupt their efforts? It was Hiroshi who proposed a solution. "We use a combination of spirit pathways and ancient shifter magic," he explained. "Those invited will be given a special totem. At the appointed time, they focus their energy on the totem, and it will guide them through the veils between worlds directly to the island." The preparations were complex and exhausting. Chenoa found herself stretched thin, coordinating with allied packs, negotiating with powerful spirits to secure safe passage, and continuing her training to strengthen her abilities for the challenges she knew lay ahead. Through it all, Kiona remained a steadfast presence at her side. One evening, as they sat by a campfire reviewing lists of attendees, Kiona noticed the dark circles under Chenoa's eyes. "You need to rest," she said gently, taking the scrolls from Chenoa's hands. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion." Chenoa sighed, running a hand through her hair. I know. It's just, there's so much at stake. If this gathering fails, if we can't unite the packs and spirits, then everything we've worked for could fall apart." Kiona placed a comforting hand on her friend's shoulder. "It won't fail. You've done something incredible, Chenoa. You've given hope to those who had none, shown a new way forward when the old paths were leading to destruction. Trust in that. Trust in yourself." As the day of the gathering approached, tension mounted. Reports came in of increased activity from those opposed to their movement. Packs loyal to the old ways of spirit subjugation were massing, led by a shadowy figure known only as the Crimson Alpha. Whispers spoke of dark rituals and forbidden magics being employed to counter the new balance Chenoa and her allies were trying to create. The night before they were to depart for the hidden island, Chenoa found herself unable to sleep. She slipped out of the camp, walking to a nearby cliff overlooking a moonlit valley. As she stood there trying to quiet her racing thoughts, she felt a familiar presence materialize beside her. "You carry a heavy burden, my daughter," her mother's spirit said softly. Chenoa turned, drinking in the sight of her spectral parent. "I'm afraid, Mom," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid that I'm not strong enough, that I'll let everyone down." Her mother's form shimmered, and Chenoa felt the ghostly impression of a hand on her cheek. "Fear is natural, but don't let it consume you. Remember, your strength comes not just from your abilities, but from the bonds you've forged, the trust you've earned." As they stood there in companionable silence, Chenoa felt some of her anxiety begin to ebb away. Her mother was right. She wasn't facing this alone. She had allies, friends, and the wisdom of generations supporting her. The journey to the hidden island was a testament to the new reality they were creating. Shifters and spirits traveled together through veiled pathways, guided by the totems Hiroshi had crafted. When they emerged onto the shimmering beaches Chenoa had seen in her vision, gasps of wonder echoed across the assembled crowd. The island was even more breathtaking in person. The ancient trees of the central grove seemed to pulse with an inner light, their leaves a cascade of colors that shifted between the physical and spirit realms. The stone circle at the heart of the island thrummed with power, its smooth surfaces etched with symbols so old they predated known language. As attendees from around the world gathered, Chenoa felt a surge of hope. Here were shifters and spirits from every continent, every tradition, coming together with open minds and hearts. It was a visual representation of everything they had been fighting for. The opening ceremony was a sight to behold. A dais, resplendent in traditional African regalia, called the gathering to order. Spirits danced through the air, their forms shimmering between mist and solid shape. Shifters from rival packs who once would have been at each other's throats now stood side by side, united in their desire for a new future. Chenoa stepped forward to address the assembly, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Look around. You, she began, her words carrying to every corner of the grove. What you see here was once thought impossible. Shifters and spirits, working together not through coercion or fear, but through mutual respect and understanding. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the diverse faces before her. We stand at a crossroads. The old ways of domination and subjugation have brought us to the brink of destruction. But here now, we have a chance to forge a new path, a path of balance, of harmony between realms. As Chenoa spoke, she could feel the energy of the island responding, the ancient magics resonating with her words. The assembled shifters and spirits listened intently, many nodding in agreement, others with expressions of dawning hope on their faces. But just as Chenoa was building to the crescendo of her speech, a commotion erupted at the edge of the gathering. A group of shifters burst through the crowd, their eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. At their head was a figure that could only be the Crimson Alpha, a massive wolf shifter with fur the color of spilled blood. "Pretty words," the Crimson Alpha snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. "But words won't protect your packs. When rival clans attack, words won't give you the power to shape the world to your will." Chenoa stood her ground as the intruders advanced. "And what has your way brought us?" she challenged. "Endless cycles of violence, spirits enslaved and corrupted, the very fabric between realms starting to tear." The Crimson Alpha's lips curled back in a savage grin. "Power is meant to be taken, little girl. The strong dominate the weak. That is the way of nature, the way it has always been and always will be." As he spoke, dark energies began to swirl around him and his followers. Enslaved spirits, their forms twisted almost beyond recognition, materialized at their command. The peaceful atmosphere of the gathering shattered as panic began to spread. Chenoa felt a moment of despair. This was her worst fear realized, their enemies striking at the heart of everything they had worked for. But then she felt a hand on her shoulder. Kiona stood beside her, eyes blazing with determination. Adayezi, Hiroshi, and others from their journey stepped up, forming a protective circle. And it wasn't just them. Shifters and spirits from the gathering were rallying, moving to stand with Chenoa against the threat. She saw determination in their eyes, a refusal to let this new dream die before it could truly begin. Drawing on every ounce of her training, every scrap of her dual heritage, Chenoa reached out with her Dreamwalker and Spirit Weaver abilities. She could see the tangled webs of corrupted energy binding the Crimson Alpha and his followers to the enslaved spirits. More than that, she could sense the pain and fear underlying their aggression, the desperate clinging to old ways out of terror of an uncertain future. "It doesn't have to be this way," Chenoa said, her voice carrying a power that made even the Crimson Alpha pause. "The strength you seek, the security you crave, it doesn't come from domination. True power comes from balance, from cooperation." As she spoke, Chenoa began to glow with an inner light. The energies of the island responded to her, the ancient magics of the Nexus Point amplifying her abilities. Beside her, a daisy began a low chant, calling upon the wisdom of her ancestors. Hiroshi moved in fluid motions, weaving protective barriers of spirit energy around the gathering. The Crimson Alpha snarled and launched himself at Chenoa, claws extended. But before he could reach her, a wall of spectral energy materialized. Spirits of all kinds, from the tiniest nature sprites to ancient primal forces, had formed, a protective barrier around Chenoa and her allies. What followed was a battle unlike any the world had seen before. It was fought not just on the physical plane, but across the boundaries of realms. Chenoa found herself at the center of it all, acting as a conduit between shifters and spirits, coordinating their efforts against the Crimson Alpha's onslaught. As the fight raged, Chenoa realized that brute force alone wouldn't be enough. She needed to break the cycle of violence to show another way. Reaching deep within herself, she tapped into the combined power of her Dreamwalker and Spirit Weaver heritage. The world around her seemed to slow, colors bleeding into a swirling vortex of energy. Chenoa found herself in a space between realms, face to face with the Crimson Alpha's true self, not the snarling beast of hatred, but the wounded soul beneath. "Look," she said softly, gesturing to the scenes that materialized around them. "This is what your path leads to. Images flashed by, packs torn apart by infighting, spirits warped beyond recognition, the very land withering under the weight of corrupted magics. But then the visions shifted, showing another possibility. A world where shifters and spirits worked in harmony, where power came from mutual support rather than domination. "It's not too late," Chenoa urged, reaching out a hand to the Crimson Alpha. "Help me build this new world, be a part of something greater than conquest and subjugation." For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the Crimson Alpha stood frozen. Chenoa could see the conflict raging behind his eyes, years of conditioning and fear warring against the hope she offered. Then, slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and took her hand. The moment their fingers touched, a shockwave of energy pulsed outward. Back in the physical realm, the battling shifters and spirits stumbled as they felt the shift. The corrupted bonds holding the enslaved spirits shattered, releasing them from their torment. As the dust settled and the chaotic energies dissipated, Chenoa found herself standing in the center of the stone circle, the Crimson Alpha kneeling before her. Around them, shifters and spirits alike watched in awe as the leader of their opposition bowed his head in submission and respect. I was wrong," the Crimson Alpha said, his voice rough with emotion. "The path I chose, the power I sought, it was destroying everything, including myself." Chenoa helped him to his feet, her voice gentle but firm. "The past is past. What matters now is how we move forward, together." As the gravity of what had just occurred settled over the gathering, a ripple of excitement and hope spread through the crowd. Shifters who had been on opposite sides of the conflict moments ago now embraced. Spirits swirled in joyous patterns through the air, and the very island itself seemed to hum with renewed energy. Adais approached, her eyes shining with pride and a touch of awe. "What you've done here, Chenoa. It's beyond anything we could have hoped for. You haven't just prevented a war. You've opened the door to a truly new era." As the gathering resumed, now with an even greater sense of purpose and unity, Chenoa found a quiet moment to reflect. She thought of her journey, from a young shifter in Wolf's Hollow to the linchpin of a global transformation. She thought of her parents, of Tasunka and Wakasa, of all those who had guided and supported her along the way. But most of all, she thought of the future stretching out before them. There would be challenges ahead, old prejudices to overcome, new balances to strike. But for the first time, Chenoa felt truly confident that they were on the right path. As the sun began to set, painting the island in hues of gold and purple, Chenoa stood at the edge of the shore. Kiona joined her, bumping her shoulder playfully. "So, oh great unifier of realms," Kiona teased. "What's next on the agenda? Planning to reshape the entire world?" Chenoa laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "One step at a time, my friend. We've made a start here, but there's still so much work to do." As they stood there, watching the intermingling of shifters and spirits against the backdrop of a sunset that seemed to span both realms, Chenoa felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them, together, a united front of shifters and spirits, working in harmony to build a better world for all. The days following the confrontation with the Crimson Alpha were a whirlwind of activity on the hidden island. What had begun as a tense gathering transformed into a jubilant celebration of newfound unity. Shifters and spirits alike worked together to craft a framework for their new coexistence, drawing on the wisdom of diverse traditions and the insights gained from their shared experiences. Chenoa found herself at the center of it all, mediating discussions, offering guidance, and often simply listening as centuries of misunderstandings and conflicts were slowly but surely resolved. It was exhausting work, but deeply fulfilling. Every agreement reached, every old grudge set aside, felt like another step toward the harmonious future she had envisioned. As the gathering drew to a close, a sense of bittersweet anticipation filled the air. The attendees prepared to return to their respective territories, eager to implement what they had learned and to spread the message of unity to those who had not been present. On the final evening, a grand ceremony was held in the heart of the ancient grove. Shifters and spirits alike gathered around the stone circle, which pulsed with a soft, warm light that seemed to embody the new bonds forged between realms. Adais stepped forward, her regal bearing commanding attention without a word. "My friends," she began, her voice carrying easily to every ear. "We stand at the dawn of a new era. What we have accomplished here will echo through generations to come. But our work is far from over." She turned, gesturing for Chenoa to join her. As Chenoa stepped into the circle, she felt the island's ancient power resonating with her own abilities, amplifying her connection to both the physical and spirit realms. "Chenoa," Adaisi continued, "you have shown us a path forward that many thought impossible. Your courage, compassion, and wisdom have united shifters and spirits in a way not seen since the dawn of time. It is only fitting that you should lead us in the next phase of our journey." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled crowd. Chenoa felt a momentary surge of panic at the weight of responsibility being placed upon her shoulders, but it was quickly replaced by a deep sense of certainty. This was what she had been preparing for, what her unique heritage had destined her to do. "I am honored by your trust," Chenoa said, her voice steady and clear. "But this new world we're building isn't the work of any one person. It will take all of us working together to create the future we've envisioned." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, shifters from every corner of the globe, spirits of every element and aspect. "We've taken the first steps here, but the real challenge lies ahead. We must return to our homes, our packs, our spirit realms, and put into practice what we've learned. We must be patient with those who still cling to the old ways, compassionate with those who fear change, and steadfast in our commitment to harmony between all beings." As Chenoa spoke, she felt a surge of energy from the stone circle. The ancient symbols etched into its surface began to glow, and a shimmering portal appeared in its center. Through it, Chenoa could see glimpses of places around the world. Forests, mountains, deserts, and cities where shifters and spirits coexisted. "This portal," she explained, understanding its purpose instinctively, "will allow us to stay connected, to support each other as we face the challenges ahead. When one of us needs guidance or aid, the others will be there." The gathered assembly watched in awe as Chenoa demonstrated how to use the portal, showing how it could be accessed through meditation and a focus on the unity they had achieved. It was a powerful symbol of their new interconnectedness, a tangible representation of the bridges they had built between realms and cultures. As the ceremony concluded and attendees began to make their farewells, Chenoa found herself approached by an unlikely pair, the Crimson Alpha, now humbled and transformed, walking side by side with one of the ancient spirits he had once sought to enslave. "We owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid," the Crimson Alpha said, his voice gruff with emotion. "But we would like to try. Allow us to be your emissaries to those who still resist this new way. Perhaps our story of transformation can help sway those who cling to the old paradigms of domination." Chenoa smiled, touched by the offer. "Your willingness to change, to embrace a new path, is all the repayment I could ask for. And yes, I think your testimony could be incredibly powerful. There are many out there who need to see that change. Is possible that it's never too late to choose a better way." As the island slowly emptied, its beaches and groves growing quiet once more, Chenoa found herself standing at the shore with her core group of companions, Kiona, Adaeze, Hiroshi, and the others who had been with her from the beginning of this journey. "So," Kiona said, a mixture of excitement and nervousness in her voice, "what's our next move? Back to Wolf's Hollow?" Chenoa shook her head, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Not yet. There's still so much to do, so many places that need our help in transitioning to this new balance." Adais nodded in agreement. "The seeds we've planted here need nurturing. There will be resistance, setbacks. We must be prepared to face them. And we will face them together," Hiroshi added, his calm confidence reassuring. As they discussed their plans, mapping out a journey that would take them to shifter packs and spirit enclaves around the world, Chenoa felt a familiar presence. The spectral forms of her parents materialized nearby, their faces beaming with pride. "You've exceeded every hope we ever had for you, little wolf," her father said, his voice carried on the sea breeze. Her mother nodded in agreement. "You've not only embraced your heritage, you've transformed it into something greater than we could have imagined." Chenoa felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by the love and approval radiating from her parents' spirits. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said softly. "Without everything you sacrificed, everything you taught me. The road ahead won't be easy," her father cautioned. "There are still those who will resist change, who will see this new harmony as a threat to their power. But you won't face those challenges alone," her mother added. "You have friends, allies, and the strength of both your Dreamwalker and Spirit Weaver bloodlines to guide you." As her parents' forms began to fade, returning to the spirit realm, Chenoa felt a renewed sense of purpose flood through her. She turned back to her companions, who had respectfully given her a moment with her spectral parents. "Are you all ready for this?" she asked, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "What comes next won't be easy. We'll be challenging centuries of ingrained beliefs, facing dangers both physical and spiritual." Kiona stepped forward, placing a hand on Chenoa's shoulder. "After everything we've been through, just try and stop us. Where you go, we go." The others nodded in agreement, their faces set with determination and excitement for the journey ahead. With a wave of her hand, Chenoa activated the portal in the stone circle. Images of their first destination, a trouble spot where tensions between shifters and local spirits were threatening to boil over, shimmered in the air. "Then let's go," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "We have a world to change." As they stepped through the portal together, Chenoa felt a profound sense of rightness. This was more than just a new chapter in her life. It was the beginning of a new era for shifters and spirits alike. There would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and difficulty. But she knew that with her friends by her side, with the wisdom of her ancestors to guide her, and with the unique gifts born from her dual heritage, she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The hidden island faded behind them, its ancient magic settling into a peaceful slumber. But the energy of what had transpired there, the bonds forged, the barriers broken, the new paths opened, radiated outward, touching every corner of both the physical and spirit realms. As Chenoa and her companions emerged on a windswept plain halfway across the world, ready to tackle their next challenge, the first light of dawn broke on the horizon. It was more than just the start of a new day. It was the dawn of a new age, an age of harmony, of balance, of unprecedented cooperation between shifters and spirits. And at the heart of it all was Chenoa, no longer just the girl from Wolf's Hollow, but a bridge between worlds, a catalyst for change, and a beacon of hope for all those who dreamed of a better future. As they set off across the plain, Chenoa's heart swelled with purpose and determination. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but she was ready to learn, to grow, to face whatever obstacles arose, ready to continue building the world she had glimpsed in her visions, a world where the boundaries between realms were not barriers, but gateways to understanding and cooperation. With each step, Chenoa felt the dual aspects of her heritage, Dreamwalker and Spirit Weaver, working in perfect harmony. She was no longer torn between two worlds, but a living embodiment of their potential for unity. And with her friends by her side, with allies spread across the globe, and with the wisdom of countless generations supporting her, she knew that anything was possible. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its warm light spreading across the land. As Chenoa and her companions walked toward their next adventure, their shadows stretched out behind them, not just their own, but those of all who had come before, and all who would follow in their footsteps. It was the dawn of a new era, and they were the ones who would shape it. The story of Chenoa, the girl who broke an ancient curse and united two realms, was far from over. In many ways it was just beginning, but as she faced the future with hope and determination, one thing was certain: the world would never be the same again. And so, dear reader, we leave Chenoa and her friends as they embark on the next phase of their journey. Their tale will continue to unfold, touching lives and changing destinies in ways yet unimagined. For in a world where the boundaries between reality and spirit have been forever altered, where ancient magics and modern hearts beat as one, anything is possible.